far beneath the reach of the prehistoric sun, an eternal twilight governs the silent depths. Here, at the very bottom of the ancient ocean, the world exists in a state of profound, undisturbed tranquility. The abyssal plain stretches outward into the velvet darkness, a vast desert of soft, ancient silt that has remained untouched for millennia. There are no sudden movements in this submerged realm, only the agonizingly slow, rhythmic pulse of deep time. The immense hydrostatic pressure dictates a hypnotic, pendulum-like motion for all who dwell within the midnight void. Descending from the unseen world above is a continuous, mesmerizing storm of drifting marine snow. Microscopic fragments of organic detritus drift downward with an agonizing slowness, suspended in the dense, freezing water column. These tiny particulates catch the faintest glimmer of deep-sea bioluminescence, resembling a galaxy of slow-falling stars settling upon the ocean floor. This gentle rain provides the foundational energy for the tranquil ecosystem below, transforming the barren silt into a peaceful sanctuary of slow, deliberate survival. Navigating this hushed, underwater landscape is the trilobite. The trilobite moves with a methodical, rhythmic grace, the multitude of articulated legs of the trilobite sweeping through the soft sediment. The dense water provides a heavy, comforting resistance, forcing the trilobite to adopt an incredibly slow, deliberate pace. Every movement the trilobite makes is an exercise in extreme patience and energy conservation. The heavy shell of the trilobite, etched with ancient, barnacle-like hitchhikers, speaks to a long, peaceful existence in the dark. Unlike the chaotic, fast-paced survival strategies of the shallow, sunlit waters above, the Midnight Zone operates on a different biological frequency. The trilobite does not hunt, nor does the trilobite flee. Instead, the trilobite simply exists, absorbing the drifting marine snow that blankets the ancient seabed. The ultra-detailed textures of the exoskeleton of the trilobite reveal naturally smoothed shell edges, softened by centuries of gentle ocean currents, a testament to a life entirely devoid of violence or sudden aggression. A deep, resonant hum vibrates through the dense water column, the signature of deep-time acoustic resonance. Because water cannot be compressed, the immense weight of the ocean above amplifies ultra-low frequency vibrations, creating a continuous, soothing lullaby that permeates the abyssal plain. The trilobite senses these deep vibrations, allowing the acoustic waves to guide the slow, sweeping motions of the trilobite across the silt. The resonance acts as a metronome for the midnight void, dictating the hypnotic, sleep-like rhythms of the prehistoric deep. occasional, faint shafts of soft diffused moonlight, or perhaps the distant, bioluminescent glow of unseen gentle giants, create gentle volumetric rays that slowly shift across the ocean floor. These muted, cool aquamarine and charcoal hues cast long, peaceful shadows over the path of the trilobite. The trilobite pauses, the antennae of the trilobite twitching with an almost imperceptible slowness, as the trilobite bathes in the cold, tranquil light. There is no urgency here, only the endless, quiet breathing of the ancient ocean. Patches of symbiotic flora cling to the scattered, ancient rock formations that rise gently from the silt. These soft, bioluminescent growths sway in the barely perceptible underwater currents, moving with a soothing, pendulum-like grace. The trilobite approaches a cluster of the glowing flora, moving with an extreme, heavy deliberation. The trilobite grazes silently, the ancient mechanisms of the trilobite, working in perfect, harmonious rhythm with the slow-falling particulates that surround the trilobite in the velvet dark. Time itself seems to lose meaning within this deep-sea sanctuary. The trilobite is a master of this formless void, a creature perfectly adapted to a life of perpetual, waking slumber. As the drifting marine snow continues the endless descent of the snow, the trilobite slowly continues the endless journey across the abyssal plain. The slow, rhythmic sweeping of the legs of the trilobite against the ancient silt becomes a visual mantra, a repetitive, calming motion that anchors the mind to the profound, eternal peace of the midnight zone. The physical weight of the deep ocean presses down, but the trilobite bears this immense burden with effortless ease. The biology of the trilobite is a marvel of deep water adaptation, designed not to fight the crushing pressure, but to embrace the pressure. The internal fluids of the trilobite perfectly match the density of the surrounding abyss, allowing the trilobite to achieve a state of neutral, floating buoyancy just millimeters above the silt. The trilobite hovers, almost motionless, a perfectly balanced entity suspended in the cold, dark silence. Far off in the charcoal blue distance, a gentle disturbance stirs the drifting marine snow. The disturbance is not a predator, but merely a shift in the deep ocean thermal currents, carrying the ultra-low frequency hum of the deep time resonance. The trilobite anchors firmly to the soft sediment, allowing the slow, sweeping current to wash over the armored back of the trilobite. The naturally smoothed shell edges of the trilobite deflect the heavy water with absolute aerodynamic perfection. The trilobite waits, a monument of stillness, amidst the slow-motion ballet of the deep. Every ridge, every ancient groove on the back of the trilobite tells a story of unparalleled endurance. These ultra-detailed textures are not battle scars, but the gentle geological markings of an organism that has lived in harmony with the ocean for what feels like an eternity. The trilobite carries small colonies of microscopic, symbiotic flora nestled within the joints of the trilobite, a tiny, moving ecosystem that glows faintly in the pitch black. The trilobite provides a safe harbor for these luminous travelers, drifting together through the long night. The abyssal lullaby continues to vibrate through the water, a deep, resonant hum that seems to slow the beating of the heart. The trilobite enters a state of near hibernation as the trilobite slowly crawls over a gentle dune of ancient silt. The metabolic rate of the trilobite drops to an absolute minimum, conserving every precious ounce of energy gleaned from the falling particulates. In this profound state of rest, the trilobite becomes one with the seafloor, an ancient stone brought to slow, deliberate life by the magic of the deep. To observe the trilobite in this undisturbed habitat is to witness the true hidden nature of the prehistoric world. The ancient ocean was not a realm solely defined by colossal battles for survival, but rather a vast, silent expanse where patience was the ultimate evolutionary triumph. The trilobite embodies this triumph, turning the harsh, freezing emptiness of the midnight zone into a sanctuary of supreme, undisturbed calm. The trilobite is the silent custodian of the deep, meticulously combing the ancient silt under the watchful gaze of the endless falling snow. As the deep time resonance pulses through the water column, the subtle, cool white balance of the deep sea shifts imperceptibly. The muted aquamarines give way to a deeper, richer charcoal as the distant, invisible sun sets on the chaotic world miles above. The trilobite remains entirely unaffected by the turning of the earth, insulated by thousands of meters of dense, heavy water. The trilobite simply continues the slow, hypnotic march, one tiny, deliberate movement after another, echoing into the vast, beautiful emptiness of the ancient ocean. The dense water column above the trilobite acts as a colossal, sound-dampening blanket. All the frantic energy of the sunlit shallows, the crashing waves, the chaotic weather, the rapid, darting movements of surface dwellers is completely erased by the time the energy reaches the abyssal plane. The trilobite exists in a perfect auditory vacuum, broken only by the soothing, rhythmic hum of the deep time resonance. The trilobite lowers the armored head of the trilobite to the silt, basking in the profound sensory deprivation of the midnight zone. A solitary, bioluminescent, ancient jellyfish ancestor drifts lazily past the trilobite. The jellyfish does not possess the capacity to hunt. The jellyfish merely pulses with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, trailing long, delicate ribbons of glowing, symbiotic flora. The trilobite pauses the slow march of the trilobite, allowing the gentle, glowing entity to pass completely unhindered. The soft, deep blue light from the jellyfish washes over the trilobite, briefly illuminating the ultra-detailed textures of the ancient shell before fading back into the comforting velvet dark. This fleeting interaction between the trilobite and the drifting light is a masterpiece of prehistoric harmony. There is no competition here, no frantic struggle for dominance, only the shared slow-motion existence in a realm that demands absolute, unwavering patience. The trilobite resumes the gentle, sweeping motion of the legs of the trilobite, leaving a faint, perfect track in the ancient silt. This track is the only evidence that the trilobite has passed, a temporary, peaceful scar on the ocean floor that will soon be erased by the endless, drifting marine snow. Here, in the heart of the abyssal lullaby, the true essence of the prehistoric ocean is revealed. Not as a terrifying abyss, but as a cradle of profound, eternal sleep, the trilobite is the ultimate symbol of this hidden world. The trilobite requires so little, asks for nothing, and exists in a state of pure, symbiotic balance with the dark. As the drifting marine snow continues to fall, blanketing the trilobite in a soft white shroud, the endless night of the deep time resonance plays on, an eternal song for the patient, peaceful guardians of the deep. Slowly leaving the silty domain of the trilobite behind, the perspective drifts upward into the vast, open expanse of the midnight water column. Here, suspended thousands of feet above the abyssal plain, floats the true guardian of the prehistoric deep, the Archelon. The Archelon is not a beast of prey, nor is the Archelon built for sudden bursts of speed. The immense, leathery body of the Archelon is perfectly calibrated to navigate the crushing hydrostatic pressure with a deeply hypnotic, effortless grace. The massive front flippers of the Archelon extend outward like the wings of a slow-motion glider. The Archelon does not paddle. Instead, the Archelon utilizes a soothing, pendulum-like motion to displace the heavy, freezing water. Each downward sweep of the flippers of the Archelon takes several agonizingly slow seconds to complete, followed by an equally long, relaxed upward glide. This rhythmic, repetitive rowing motion allows the Archelon to achieve perfect, neutral buoyancy without expending vital energy. The dense ocean acts as a magnifying glass for the deep time acoustic resonance. The ultra-low frequency vibrations of the deep reverberate through the massive, ribbed shell of the Archelon, tuning the internal biological clock of the Archelon to the heartbeat of the abyss. The Archelon closes the heavy-lidded eyes of the Archelon, surrendering entirely to the deep, resonant hum that guides the migration of the Archelon. The resonance dictates a metabolic rate so profoundly slow that the heart of the Archelon beats only once every few minutes. Imprinted upon the leathery carapace of the Archelon are the ultra-detailed textures of an ancient, undisturbed life. The Archelon carries no fresh predation scars, no evidence of violent encounters in the dark. Instead, the back of the Archelon is adorned with naturally smoothed shell edges and ancient, barnacle-like hitchhikers that have lived upon the Archelon for decades. The Archelon serves as a floating, peaceful island for these tiny passengers, transporting the hitchhikers through the endless, dark blue void. Clinging softly to the ridges of the shell of the Archelon are delicate wisps of symbiotic flora. These tiny, faintly glowing organisms sway in harmony with the pendulum-like motion of the Archelon, creating a soft, bioluminescent halo around the massive form of the Archelon. As the Archelon glides through the heavy water, the symbiotic flora trail behind like microscopic, glowing ribbons. The Archelon provides a safe, mobile anchor for the flora, asking for absolutely nothing in return. A continuous shower of drifting marine snow falls silently around the massive body of the Archelon. The tiny, organic particulates catch the soft glow of the flora, enveloping the Archelon in a mesmerizing, slow-falling blizzard. The Archelon does not attempt to feed on the marine snow, but simply allows the particulates to wash over the smooth, hydrodynamic skull of the Archelon. The gentle friction of the water and the snow creates a visual white noise that emphasizes the profound calm of the deep. Faint, ghostly, volumetric rays of diffused twilight pierce the upper limits of the midnight zone, reaching down to caress the back of the Archelon. The muted aquamarines and deep charcoal hues of the ocean reflect off the wet, leathery skin of the Archelon. The Archelon slowly tilts the massive head of the Archelon upward, basking in the weak, cool white balance of the distant surface. There is no warmth in these rays, but the Archelon absorbs the tranquil light with a quiet, undisturbed reverence. The sheer physical mass of the Archelon is a testament to the evolutionary marvel of deep-sea gigantism. In this structureless, three-dimensional void, the Archelon faces no gravity, allowing the Archelon to grow to proportions that would be impossible on land. Yet, despite the staggering size of the Archelon remains entirely unthreatening. The beak of the Archelon is blunt and smooth, designed only for plucking soft, gelatinous organisms that occasionally drift into the path of the Archelon. Swimming is an inadequate term for the movement of the Archelon. The Archelon flies through the dense water column. In a state of suspended animation, the water resistance creates a heavy, comforting drag against the body of the Archelon, turning every subtle adjustment into a slow, sweeping arc. The Archelon stretches the back flippers of the Archelon to stabilize the massive frame, locking the body of the Archelon into a perfect horizontal glide. The Archelon becomes a silent monolith drifting through the dark. The isolation of the Midnight Zone provides the Archelon with an impenetrable shield against the chaotic world above. The Archelon never encounters the violent storms that rage across the surface of the ocean, nor does the Archelon face the aggressive, fast-paced predators of the sunlit shallows. The Archelon exists in a perpetual sanctuary of silence, wrapped in a thick, insulating blanket of freezing, highly pressurized water. The Archelon knows only the soothing, rhythmic pulse of the ancient deep. As the Archelon continues the slow, endless journey, the heavy shell of the Archelon subtly shifts the surrounding water, creating microscopic, curling eddies. These invisible currents disturb the drifting marine snow, causing the tiny particulates to swirl gently in the wake of the Archelon. The Archelon leaves no permanent trace in the immense ocean, only a temporary swirling dance of organic matter that slowly settles back into the rhythm of the deep. The Archelon is a phantom of the prehistoric abyss. The deep time acoustic resonance hums a low, continuous chord that vibrates the very molecules of the water. The Archelon absorbs this ancient acoustic energy through the plastron, the lower shell of the Archelon. The resonance acts as a biological metronome, keeping the incredibly slow, steady heartbeat of the Archelon in perfect synchronicity with the ocean. The Archelon breathes with the ocean, moving with the ocean, existing entirely as an extension of the tranquil, submerged, prehistoric world. Occasional, gelatinous ancestors of ancient jellyfish drift past the Archelon, the soft, bioluminescent bells of the jellyfish, pulsing in the dark. The Archelon completely ignores the fragile creatures, allowing the jellyfish to bounce harmlessly off the thick, leathery shoulders of the Archelon. The Archelon and the drifting jellyfish share the exact same evolutionary philosophy: extreme patience and total surrender to the gentle ocean currents. The Archelon glides through the shimmering swarm without causing a single ripple of panic. The natural, neutral tones of the deep-sea cool white balance render the Archelon almost invisible against the vast backdrop of the Midnight Zone. The deep blues and charcoal shadows perfectly camouflage the dark, mottled skin of the Archelon. However, the Archelon does not hide out of fear. The Archelon blends into the darkness simply because the Archelon belongs to the darkness. The Archelon is an intrinsic, inseparable component of the quiet, sleeping architecture of the ancient underwater universe. Every slow, pendulum-like sweep of the massive flippers of the Archelon reinforces the deeply hypnotic pacing of the documentary. The viewer is compelled to match the breathing of the viewer to the agonizingly slow rhythm of the Archelon. The Archelon does not rush toward a destination, because for the Archelon, there is no destination. The entire existence of the Archelon is the journey, a continuous, peaceful drift through a realm where time stretches out into an endless, soothing eternity. The ultra-detailed textures of the deep wrinkles around the eyes of the Archelon speak of centuries spent observing the quiet void. The Archelon blinks, a slow, deliberate lowering of heavy eyelids that takes several seconds to complete. This singular motion of the Archelon encapsulates the profound lethargy of the midnight zone. The Archelon is awake, yet the Archelon dreams. Suspended in a twilight state of consciousness, governed by the immense weight of the water column and the soothing acoustic hum. A faint, distant cluster of symbiotic flora illuminates a massive, ancient sponge formation towering in the deep. The Archelon slowly alters the trajectory of the Archelon to glide gently over the organic structure. The Archelon maintains a respectful, comfortable distance, ensuring the heavy shell of the Archelon does not disturb the delicate, bioluminescent ecosystem. The Archelon is a gentle custodian of the deep, passing over the silent gardens of the midnight zone like a slow-moving cloud in a dark night sky. The sheer volume of water displaced by the Archelon is massive, yet the Archelon creates absolutely no sound. The fluid dynamics of the prehistoric ocean perfectly cushion the massive form of the Archelon, absorbing any acoustic disturbance. The Archelon moves in total silence, a massive shadow sliding through the deep blue twilight. The Archelon represents the ultimate mastery of the deep, a biological design so flawless, so perfectly attuned to the environment, that the Archelon simply becomes part of the ocean. The drifting marine snow continues to fall, dusting the broad back of the Archelon with a fine layer of white organic particulates. The Archelon pays no mind to the gentle accumulation, allowing the marine snow to settle upon the naturally smoothed shell edges of the Archelon. The Archelon carries this snowy mantle through the darkness, a majestic, slow-moving mountain of the deep. The Archelon embodies the peaceful, enduring spirit of the prehistoric sea, forever isolated from the chaos of the sunlit world above. As the perspective slowly drifts away from the massive, leathery body of the Archelon fades seamlessly back into the charcoal and dark blue shadows. The slow, pendulum-like motion of the flippers of the Archelon remains visible for a few moments longer, a rhythmic, hypnotic visual cue that slowly dissolves into the dense water column. The Archelon leaves behind a profound sense of calm, an overwhelming reassurance that the deep, ancient ocean is a place of endless, undisturbed sanctuary. The abyssal lullaby hums on, carrying the deep time resonance far beyond the slowly disappearing silhouette of the Archelon. The water column remains thick with the visual white noise of the falling particulates, guiding the perspective ever so slightly higher into a zone where the absolute black begins to soften into a profound, muted aquamarine. The Archelon has passed, but the hypnotic rhythm of the ancient deep remains unchanged, paving the way for the delicate, spiraling shapes that drift blindly in the velvet dark. Drifting gently upward from the domain of the massive reptile, the absolute charcoal blackness of the abyss softens into a profound, muted aquamarine. This is the lower threshold of the ancient twilight zone. Suspended within this vast, structureless void is a masterpiece of prehistoric geometry, the Ammonite. The Ammonite does not swim. Rather, the Ammonite hovers in a state of perfect, weightless suspension. The dense water column embraces the coiled shell of the Ammonite. The coiled shell of the Ammonite is a flawless, logarithmic spiral, perfectly engineered to withstand the crushing, hydrostatic pressure of the ancient ocean. The ultra-tailed textures of the shell reveal naturally smoothed shell edges, polished to a dull shine by centuries of slow-moving currents. The Ammonite slowly rotates in the heavy water, a hypnotic, spinning monolith that catches the faintest glimmers of deep-sea light. There is no hurry in the rotation of the Ammonite. To maintain this effortless buoyancy, the Ammonite utilizes a complex, internal system of gas chambers. The Ammonite slowly regulates these ancient chambers, allowing the Ammonite to rise or fall with an agonizingly slow, pendulum-like motion. Each vertical shift takes many minutes to execute, creating a deeply soothing visual rhythm. The heavy water resistance turns every subtle adjustment of the Ammonite into a slow-motion dance, a tranquil ballet performed in the velvet dark. Extending from the dark opening of the spiral shell are the soft, delicate tentacles of the Ammonite. The Ammonite does not use these appendages to hunt or grasp frantically. Instead, the ammonite extends the tentacles outward into a relaxed, motionless canopy. The ammonite waits with infinite patience for the drifting marine snow to settle upon the soft flesh. The particulates slowly drift downward, creating a mesmerizing, visual white noise around the face of the ammonite. A continuous, deep hum vibrates through the muted aquamarine water, the unmistakable signature of deep-time acoustic resonance. The ammonite senses these ultra-low frequency waves through the hollow chambers of the shell, turning the ammonite into a living, floating resonator. The resonance hums a physical lullaby that slows the breathing of the ammonite down to a near halt. The ammonite exists in a permanent trance, guided entirely by the soothing acoustics of the prehistoric deep. Clinging gently to the outermost ridges of the shell of the ammonite are tiny patches of glowing symbiotic flora. These microscopic organisms emit a deeply calming, cool blue light that illuminates the ultra-detailed textures of the ancient spiral. The ammonite provides a safe, drifting home for the flora, while the flora offers a soft, bioluminescent beacon in the dark. The ammonite and the glowing passengers travel together, an island of peaceful light in the endless ocean. Faint, ghostly, volumetric rays of diffused twilight filter down from the distant, unseen surface. These weak sunbeams pierce the dark blues and charcoal shadows, casting a gentle, shifting illumination upon the ammonite. The ammonite slowly bobs within these tranquil shafts of light, the naturally smooth shell edges of the ammonite reflecting the cool white balance of the deep sea. The ammonite bathes in the cold twilight, undisturbed by the chaotic world thousands of feet above. Drifting silently into the volumetric rays, alongside the ammonite, is a deeply hypnotic entity, the primordial jellyfish. The primordial jellyfish possesses no hard structures, consisting entirely of a soft, translucent bell and long, trailing ribbons of delicate tissue. The primordial jellyfish pulses with an incredibly slow, rhythmic contraction, displacing the heavy water with a soothing, pendulum-like grace. The primordial jellyfish is the physical embodiment of deep water tranquility. The soft bell of the primordial jellyfish glows with a natural, internal bioluminescence. The light of the primordial jellyfish does not flash or strobe. Instead, the light of the primordial jellyfish gently swells and fades in perfect synchronicity with the deep-time acoustic resonance. The primordial jellyfish casts a muted aquamarine glow that washes over the spiral shell of the ammonite. The ammonite accepts this gentle illumination, remaining perfectly still as the light washes over. is absolutely no competition or fear between these two ancient travelers. The primordial jellyfish drifts within inches of the extended tentacles of the Ammonite, yet neither organism reacts with sudden movement or alarm. The Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish share a profound understanding of energy conservation, recognizing that the true secret to survival in the midnight void is absolute stillness. The Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish hover together in perfect harmony. The trailing ribbons of the primordial jellyfish act as a vast, sticky net designed not for violence, but for passive collection. The primordial jellyfish allows the drifting marine snow to catch upon the long, delicate strands. As the microscopic particulates accumulate, the primordial jellyfish slowly draws the ribbons upward, absorbing the falling energy of the ocean. The primordial jellyfish relies entirely on the gentle, downward drift of the ancient prehistoric ecosystem. The dense, freezing water column wraps around the primordial jellyfish, providing a heavy, comforting blanket that dictates the slow pacing of the primordial jellyfish. The water resistance is so profound that every pulse of the bell of the primordial jellyfish feels as though the pulse is pushing against a thick, liquid glass. The primordial jellyfish surrenders completely to this heavy resistance, allowing the ocean to rock the fragile body of the primordial jellyfish to a peaceful sleep. Looking closely at the Ammonite, a single, highly developed eye peers out from beneath the edge of the spiral shell. The eye of the Ammonite is a marvel of deep-sea adaptation, designed to gather the faintest traces of twilight. The Ammonite blinks with extreme deliberation, a slow descent of the eyelid that mimics the falling, drifting marine snow. The Ammonite observes the glowing form of the primordial jellyfish with a calm, unblinking serenity, unbothered by the passing centuries. The deep time acoustic resonance swells slightly, shifting the surrounding water currents. The gentle, invisible wave pushes the primordial jellyfish on a slightly higher trajectory. The primordial jellyfish offers no resistance, allowing the silent current to carry the gelatinous form upward. The Ammonite, sensing the shift in the deep ocean acoustics, slowly adjusts the internal gas chambers of the Ammonite. The Ammonite begins a slow, corresponding ascent to follow the drifting light. The shared ascent of the Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish is a masterpiece of hypnotic, slow-motion physics. The Ammonite spins subtly on a vertical axis, while the primordial jellyfish pulses with a rhythmic, expanding bloom. The particulates of the drifting marine snow swirl around the Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish, painting a mesmerizing picture of visual white noise. The Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish rise together, bound by the peaceful magic of the Twilight Zone. In this structureless expanse, the sheer emptiness of the ocean becomes a source of profound comfort. The Ammonite never has to worry about colliding with hidden rocks or sudden obstacles. The primordial jellyfish never fears being torn by violent coastal waves. The dark blue void offers the Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish an infinite, perfectly safe canvas upon which to exist. The Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish are completely isolated, wrapped in a serene, eternal darkness. The ultra-detailed textures of the symbiotic flora on the Ammonite glow slightly brighter as the Ammonite reaches a slightly warmer thermal layer. The cool white balance of the environment shifts seamlessly, adding a hint of pale indigo to the deep charcoal shadows. The Ammonite ceases the slow upward movement, establishing a new plane of neutral buoyancy. The Ammonite extends the soft tentacles outward once more, resuming the ancient, motionless vigil in the heart of the velvet dark. Primordial jellyfish slowly settles into the exact same thermal layer, the pulsing bell of the primordial jellyfish slowing down to match the new lethargic rhythm. The primordial jellyfish and the Ammonite hang suspended together, two distinctly different shapes united by the absolute tranquility of the prehistoric ocean. The deep time acoustic resonance hums a steady, unbroken chord, locking the Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish into a state of deep, meditative, underwater slumber. This hypnotic diorama, the glowing spiral and the pulsing bell, serves as a beautiful reminder of the gentle, unseen side of the ancient world. The Ammonite requires no armor, and the primordial jellyfish requires no fangs. The Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish thrive entirely on patience, stillness, and an unwavering harmony with the dense water column. The Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish are the peaceful dreamers of the deep, slowly spinning the centuries away in the silent deep. As the soft bioluminescence of the primordial jellyfish begins to fade into the surrounding charcoal waters, the massive spiral silhouette of the Ammonite remains visible for just a moment longer. The Ammonite becomes a dark, perfect circle against the muted aquamarines, a geometric anchor in the shifting void. The drifting marine snow continues to fall heavily, slowly obscuring the Ammonite and the primordial jellyfish, drawing the perspective deeper into the quiet, ancient night. Drifting further away from the floating geometric perfection of the Ammonite, the dense water column slowly yields to the ancient, submerged architecture of the Midnight Zone. Here, hidden within the dark, sheltering crevices of a towering, prehistoric sponge reef, rests the ultimate master of patience, the Coelacanth. The coelacanth does not actively patrol the deep blues and charcoal shadows of the ocean. Instead, the coelacanth completely surrenders to the heavy, freezing stillness. The physical form of the coelacanth is a breathtaking marvel of deep water evolution, designed exclusively for prolonged, undisturbed hovering. The thick, lobed fins of the coelacanth extend outward from the heavy body, functioning less like the fins of a standard fish and more like the balancing limbs of a slow-motion acrobat. The coelacanth uses these thick, muscular lobes to maintain an absolutely perfect neutral buoyancy within the crushing hydrostatic pressure of the abyss. Every subtle adjustment the coelacanth makes is profoundly slow, governed by the heavy, pendulum-like resistance of the ancient water. The coelacanth slowly rotates the left pectoral fin, a sweeping, agonizingly slow motion that takes several deep breaths to complete. This microscopic movement allows the coelacanth to stabilize against the microscopic thermal currents that drift through the dark reef. The coelacanth remains suspended in the velvet dark like a living, breathing stone. The continuous, hypnotic shower of drifting marine snow falls gently around the quiet sanctuary of the coelacanth. The tiny, organic particulates settle softly upon the broad, armored head of the coelacanth, blanketing the ancient scales in a fine, white layer of oceanic dust. The coelacanth makes absolutely no effort to shake off the gentle accumulation, allowing the soft debris to weave the coelacanth seamlessly into the quiet, unchanging tapestry of the prehistoric seafloor. The large, reflective eyes of the coelacanth are perfectly adapted to the profound lack of sunlight within the midnight zone. The coelacanth stares out into the muted aquamarine void with an unblinking, meditative serenity. The deep sea, cool, white balance reflects faintly off the dark pupils of the coelacanth, capturing the microscopic, bioluminescent flashes of distant, unseen organisms. The coelacanth watches the slow-moving world drift by without the slightest hint of urgency. Covering the ancient rocks surrounding the coelacanth are dense, softly glowing patches of symbiotic flora. These delicate, luminous growths pulse in synchronicity with the deep, invisible rhythm of the ocean, casting a very faint, cool blue light over the hiding place of the coelacanth. The coelacanth absorbs this tranquil illumination, the thick, heavy scales of the coelacanth reflecting the gentle, shifting light. The coelacanth exists in perfect harmony with the glowing reef. The ultra-detailed textures of the scales of the coelacanth reveal a deep, metallic blue coloration heavily muted by the deep-sea shadows. The coelacanth bears naturally smoothed shell edges and dull, ancient ridges that speak of an incredibly long life spent entirely in the slow lane of evolution. The coelacanth possesses no fresh wounds and no ragged fins, proving that the existence of the coelacanth is completely devoid of the chaotic violence found in the sunlit shallows. Ultra-low frequency hum reverberates through the heavy water, carrying the soothing vibrations of the deep time acoustic resonance. The coelacanth senses this primordial lullaby through a highly specialized lateral line system running down the thick flank of the coelacanth. The resonance acts as a hypnotic metronome, instantly lowering the heart rate of the coelacanth to a slow, steady pulse. The coelacanth breathes in perfect, rhythmic time with the ancient, singing ocean. To witness the absolute stillness of the coelacanth is to understand the true, hidden philosophy of the prehistoric deep. The coelacanth realizes that energy is the most precious resource in the midnight void, and therefore, the coelacanth chooses to expend absolutely none. The coelacanth enters a state of deep, waking hibernation, hovering millimeters above the rocky floor. The coelacanth becomes an immovable anchor of peace within the silent, structureless vastness of the water column. Occasionally, a slow-moving, gelatinous deep-sea drifter will inadvertently brush against the heavily armored side of the coelacanth. The coelacanth does not flinch, and the coelacanth does not strike out in fear. The coelacanth simply allows the soft, pulsing creature to slide past the thick scales of the coelacanth, offering no resistance to the gentle contact. The coelacanth respects the slow, wandering journey of all peaceful denizens that share this dark, freezing, underwater realm. Faint, almost imperceptible volumetric rays of diffused twilight occasionally manage to penetrate the deepest, darkest trenches of the reef. A single, cold shaft of muted aquamarine light slowly sweeps across the quiet alcove, briefly highlighting the majestic, heavily armored face of the coelacanth. The coelacanth basks in this rare, gentle touch of the distant sun, remaining perfectly motionless. The coelacanth accepts the fleeting light as a silent blessing from the world above. The dense, freezing water pushes against the coelacanth with an immense, crushing hydrostatic pressure. Yet the coelacanth remains entirely unbothered. The internal biology of the coelacanth is completely saturated with deep-sea oils, rendering the coelacanth impervious to the heavy weight of the ocean. The coelacanth floats effortlessly, supported by an invisible cushion of perfect neutral buoyancy. The Coelacanth is a master of deep water physics, forever balanced in the dark. The mouth of the Coelacanth opens with a slow, agonizingly measured deliberation. Drawing in a heavy, cold draft of the surrounding water, the Coelacanth pushes the dense fluid over ancient, slow-working gills, extracting the tiny traces of oxygen required to maintain the incredibly lethargic metabolism of the Coelacanth. This slow, rhythmic breathing cycle is the only visible proof that the Coelacanth is still alive. The Coelacanth is a living statue, breathing with the slow ocean. Time itself seems to bend and warp around the heavy, suspended form of the Coelacanth. While the chaotic surface world undergoes violent, rapid changes, the Coelacanth remains exactly the same, century after slow century. The Coelacanth is a living time capsule, preserving the peaceful, hypnotic essence of the prehistoric era within the heavy, lobed fins of the Coelacanth. The Coelacanth outlasts the ages not through speed or aggression, but through absolute, unyielding stillness. The thick, heavily armored tail of the Coelacanth ends in a unique, trilobed shape that perfectly matches the slow, ancient pacing of the creature. The Coelacanth rarely uses this broad, powerful paddle for propulsion, preferring to let the deep, invisible currents do all the necessary work. When the Coelacanth does need to shift position, a single, agonizingly slow wave passes through the tail, pushing the heavy body of the Coelacanth gently forward. The Coelacanth moves like a ghost. The ultra-detailed textures of the rocky alcove surrounding the Coelacanth provide a perfect acoustic amplification chamber for the deep ocean hum. The Coelacanth positions the heavy, lobed body directly in the center of the stone archway, allowing the soothing vibrations to wash over the Coelacanth from every possible angle. The Coelacanth absorbs the acoustic energy, turning the cold, dark cave into a personal, deeply relaxing resonance chamber. The Coelacanth rests in pure peace. Surrounding the sanctuary of the Coelacanth, tiny, bioluminescent ancestors of ancient brittle stars crawl slowly across the deep sea floor. The Coelacanth observes these glowing, fragile creatures with a calm, heavy-lidded indifference. The brittle stars emit a faint, pulsing aquamarine light that casts long, slow-moving shadows over the heavy scales of the Coelacanth. The Coelacanth shares the quiet alcove with these tiny companions, fostering a serene, undisturbed community of the dark. the deep time acoustic resonance swells into a deep, comforting bass note. The drifting marine snow seems to slow down, hanging suspended in the water. The coelacanth closes the heavy eyes of the coelacanth, drifting deeper into a profound, meditative sleep. The coelacanth allows the invisible acoustic waves to rock the heavy body of the coelacanth gently back and forth. The coelacanth is cradled by the ocean, completely safe within the dark, eternal embrace of the abyss. The long, continuous journey from the abyssal silt beds to the rocky domain of the coelacanth reveals the ultimate hidden truth of the ancient deep, the myth of a constantly violent, terrifying prehistoric ocean is washed away by the immense, quiet reality of the Midnight Zone. The Coelacanth, the Ammonite, the Archelon, and the Trilobite all prove that the true foundation of this primordial world was an incredible, enduring peace. The Coelacanth stands as the final, quiet witness. In this dark, freezing sanctuary, survival is not awarded to the fastest or the most vicious, but to the incredibly patient. The Coelacanth embodies this ultimate biological triumph, perfectly adapted to wait out the endless march of deep time. The Coelacanth requires no light, no speed, and no conflict. The Coelacanth simply exists, an eternal guardian of the deep, forever hovering in the silent drifting marine snow. The Coelacanth is the heartbeat of the sleeping, prehistoric world. As the deep charcoal shadows finally consume the faint glowing outlines of the symbiotic flora, the Coelacanth fades seamlessly into the vast, absolute darkness. The deep time resonance hums a final, soothing chord, bringing the long, hypnotic journey through the prehistoric Midnight Zone to a gentle, quiet close. If this peaceful descent into the ancient ocean has helped you find relaxation and calm, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep sleep journeys.